IVM.
We don't read and write poetry because it's cute. We read and write poetry because we're members of the human race. And the human race is filled with passion. And medicine, law, business, engineering, these are noble pursuits and necessary to sustain life. But poetry, beauty, romance, love, these are what we stay alive for. The first time I heard Robin Williams say this on Dead Poets Society, I never thought that this quote will become the crux of my entire life, something that will sustain me beyond anything else unimaginable. Ever since one has had an understanding of humankind, poetry has been equally acknowledged as a way of life. Be it the oldest form of verses, epics, sonnets, ballads, to haikus and contemporary poetic forms, poetry has witnessed and chronicled the world go around. One of the currently thriving forms that emerged in the 1980s in the streets and speakeasies of New York, went on around the world, came into contact with different cultures, and became a new form of its own. Shattering the structural compulsions, hierarchy, and elitism that at times came with the older forms of poetry, this form made poetry easy to access and poetry a medium to confess everything you've ever felt and ever wanted to say, between the lines. Spoken word, therefore, allowed everyone to make this form their own. The guest we have with us today is someone who did exactly just that, who embodied everything that Robin Williams had to say, who hung her boots and took a sabbatical from economics in the time when she was at the pinnacle of her career and went on to pursue the larger pursuits of life, that's poetry and spoken word. Join with me to listen to somebody that the spoken word community holds very dear to their heart for all the beautiful things she weaves through poetry. Hi Jasmine, welcome.
Hi.
Are you comfortable?
Yeah, I'll get better as we proceed.
So there's a ritual that we do, right? So we make you comfortable and then we kind of ask you uncomfortable questions to begin with. Because, it should not get too cozy real soon.
Okay.
So what was the first time that you remember that you took up the stage to perform your poem, and how was the first experience like?
That depends on how far I can go.
Okay.
So I was doing it in my school, in my college days, but then in between there was a long break. The career path I chose as a lecturer and then as an administrator, there was a little of wielding the mics in that as well.
Yeah.
But if you say I took to the stage as a spoken word artist and all, that was after, I think, a couple of decades.
Wow.
Yeah.
But as a lecturer, you're almost always performing, right?
Yeah, that's an altogether different
it kind of seems like improv most of the times, because you never know what your audience in the classroom is going to throw at you and how do you then deal with it and still continue to say what you wanted to say. So what was the first poem that you ever performed?
I performed Shiv Kumar Batalvi's Zakham.
Ooh.
That was the first poem. I think when I did not even understand it much, that was long back in my school. And then I've performed it later on many occasions. That was, he had written it on the Indo-China war times. But I believe that has held relevance in every time we have had any upheavals we have had any cultural or as a political upheavals.
Okay.
So I that was the first and I think that's if you ask as a performance that I hold the closest to my heart.
Okay.
I have lived that poem. I'm while reciting. That's how close it is to me.
So the reason why, I always love talking to you about slam poetry is because you have this, you're one of the only few artists that I know who has tried to study the form itself and try to, have a sense of discipline of the form. Like when I was performing a few years ago, I never actually, ritually practiced before every performance. Every time I see you, meet you or talk to you, you tell me that you're rehearsing for a big festival coming up and this is your practice session. So how was the first time the first time you figured out slam poetry as an art form, and how did you go about with that?
I think it all started from writing.
Okay.
It wasn't that one day I got up and I decided to take on, I was writing. And I was blogging and writing, and I had, I think, if I can modestly put it, I had a moderate readership as well.
Correct.
And then suddenly, I believe I stumbled upon on Commune's page Rabia Kapoor's Introverts Banter, and accidentally, and I realized I think I had forayed into comedy as well.
Okay.
So that's another story. Maybe we'll take it up later.
Yeah.
So the mics were there, the stage was there, but then I realized that the right kind of writing I was doing and I wanted to do. That was more, I was meeting that criteria more in spoken word or poetries or all of that. Because comedy requires a very different kind of writing. Yeah. It's an altogether different ballgame. Yeah. So that was the first piece I stumbled across, and I really liked the way I had just heard it on video. Okay. So the way that connect was made with a bunch of audience sitting, and the way she was telling a story that was very, very well written. Yeah. So that was my, I think, first window to the spoken word scene.
Rabia also has a very interesting story around the Introverts Banter. She talks about it like it just happened. She had never actually planned that I will write this piece, and when
I think the best things happen when you don't plan them.
Definitely, right? And I mean, when all of these people were writing back in say 2013, 2014, none of us actually had the idea of virality, as a concept in the entire spoken word dictionary. We never thought about, in what angle, if you shoot this video, would it look appealing?
No, I think none
to the audience. But now that you have a few published pieces online, you have your blog page on which you actively write and you post, and you're everywhere on the internet basically talking in different forms and formats. Does it sometimes happen that you find yourself writing poetry for the camera or something like that?
I try not to get into that trap, though it is not easy to keep yourself away from it, because we have events coming up and then you need to write more.
Correct.
Personally, if you ask me, I would not want to do that I'm just writing for an event. Or and no, I'm not saying that's a wrong way to do it. It's my personal thing that I normally write when I get that urge to write, or there is something really brewing up and it just is wanting a piece and pen, paper and pen, and I need to just vomit it out. So I prefer doing it that way.
Correct.
But then, yes, since you are in this space, I have done pieces on prompts when there has been an event coming up, and on hindsight, if I see, I'm happy I did them.
Okay.
Like, for example, my Arranged Love was an event announced by Commune, and love stories of a different kind. So I did that. I would never have done that. I mean, my story, my love story that wasn't love actually, I would never have put it up.
Okay.
But I did it, and now I feel I'm very happy I did it.
Correct.
So it has its pros and cons both. And I'm now, I think, flowing with the flow.
Yeah.
And not keeping any rigid this thing, because I have realized I might lose out on a few things if I'm that rigid. So
that's a good thing. So about being rigid in slam poetry, like the entire purpose why slam poetry was started in the 1980s by Mark Smith, who's also known as Slam Papi. So basically in the US, he started the Nuyorican poetry slam. Basically they turned these cafes and jazz clubs and blues clubs into like spoken word avenues so he was basically a construction worker, right? So it was like a counterculture movement. So people used to say poetry is for the elite, right? So poetry had a very different reader base, very different access. They brought poetry to the streets, and that's how it kind of developed. Then you see this entire second generation of slam poetry with button poetry, deaf poetry jam, everybody coming in and performing. So when it came to India, it kind of became like we were trying to not really emulate what these people are doing, but kind of replicate a format where we digitally also publish these slam poems that we perform. So were they ever your influences, or...
honestly telling you, when you were mentioning button poetry and all of that, that phenomenon, when it was coming in, I would not say I was living under a rock, but I was busy changing my son's diapers, and I was enjoying the whole motherhood thing at that time. So I had no clue. Okay. Now when I am into this space, I go back to check that where it all started and all. Yeah. But if I would be wrong if I say that was an influence on me. Because I wasn't aware of that. Yeah. So, yes, we have almost, that so many of the things that are happening in the West, we are replicating them.
Correct.
And I think this is one of the good things that we have incorporated in
Definitely.
our this thing.
Right, because it's one of the other interesting things about slam poetry, therefore also becomes that we kind of co-opted the idea of slam poetry, because we were like, okay, we have a poetry tradition in the country. We have read poetry, we have lived
we
poetry.
have a very rich
poetry tradition, right? And when you said Batalvi, all of it just started coming back to me, like all the poems you studied as syllabi.
I mean, regional literature, or for that matter, English literature.
Correct.
I think we have grown up on that. All of that. My first window to what feminism or the way we have to look at women has been. Some of Batalvi's lines only.
Yeah.
So it wasn't about a man writing or a woman writing, or we have we were fed on this literature. I mean, we have grown up on this literature. So this is another. I think this is an offshoot of the same thing.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, we see the poetry tradition on one side, and we see the theatre tradition we have in the country on the other. And spoken word gets this space between the theatrics of theatre and the poetics of poetry, and you kind of balance it out while you're performing. So sometimes do you feel that has spoken word kind of changed today? Like, I like to call it like a post-2015 phenomenon, right? Because that's when Aranya Johar's Brown Girl's Guide to Gender went viral, literally. Because over, I think, 2 or 3 days, she had clocked around 1 million views on that video. And then the definition of slam poetry changed overnight.
She was, I think, we should give her that
100% credit, right? Because then even how people started looking at slam poetry changed. I remember when you and I were just like performing, like when Commune used to do events, right? We used to see these familiar faces over and over. So you will have your Gaurav Tripathi in the room, you will have your Mohammad in the room, Rakesh would show up. Then you would have Mehak Mirza Prabhu come in and she would do a bit. And then gradually you started seeing this entirely new, set of audiences as well as interested performers, because this was not a discipline.
I think due credit to be given to the audience who has, I always quote when I start with a spoken word piece, and normally, till now, when I go for women's forums to perform, the people there are not very familiar with the spoken word politesse, as in like you snap your fingers and all of that. And I quote Joan Cheever all the time that he says that I can't write without a reader. It's precisely like a kiss. You don't do it alone. And I always say that we performers also cannot do it alone.
Definitely.
So if in the middle of my piece you will let me know by snapping fingers that yes, you have lived this story or it has tugged on your heart, it will feel like a kiss and we are in it together. That's the kind of way I introduce the spoken word. But I do believe that connect that is formed with the audience, that makes or mars your piece entirely. And I think most of our spoken word artists will vouch for that we have always had a wonderful audience.
Definitely.
Very rarely, people come to hear, as people go to laugh when they go for a comedy show. Here people come to hear you.
If you remember the Spoken Fest last year, like even when Prateek Kohad was performing, and just before Amandeep, Mohammad, Gaurav, and I don't know, there were 4 of them doing a story, and Rakesh, of course. They were doing a story together. And the response was so similar, right?
Yes,
because you believe that when you go in for a Prateek Kohad performance, you will hear this soulful music, so you're in that mood, you're feeling everything that's happening around you.
And when you're talking about that, I will say that initially I used to have my apprehensions that,
correct,
the kind of age, space I come from, the topics, and here we have mostly, like most of them are a little elder to my son. It's a very so I used to feel, will it connect with them, will it not? And the first I remember we had the Quill Company event, and there for the first time I saw Amandeep performing. That was his Muskurate Raho, and one of the strongest pieces I think I have heard till date was Kais Jaunpuri's Main namaz nahi padunga.
So, even his piece on the dictionary is really interesting. He talks about his uncle's dictionary.
In that room full of people who were all 20-somethings in that room, I was wondering, it was my first proper performance that, will they connect, will they not connect? That thing you do have. But by the end of it, that whole camaraderie and everything, and they walking up to me and saying that we could see our mother in your story and all of that. So you do feel, and there were different genres of pieces being performed. Like as I said, ranging from Amandeep's Muskurate Raho, from Kayas's piece, and to my piece, and there were many other wonderful pieces which I'm forgetting now. But yes, it is that audience in the room, and yes, the different. We are, I think, we have a very good mix of different genres of poetry being performed.
Was that the first time you performed Banter Across Generations?
No.
Okay.
That was, I performed A Mother, a Girl, a Woman.
Okay.
For that.
Because my first interaction with you has been, I first heard your Banter Across Generations. Was it across or between?
Banter Between
Generations, yes. I'm so sorry. I stand corrected.
Every time I do a piece, like I did my A Mother, a Girl, a Woman.
Okay.
My thing at that point was because I was writing. I was writing for websites. I was doing content work. And I was happier in the cocoon of my comfort and cocoon of my personal space.
Correct, yeah.
So I thought this is one story I have. I'll share it with the world and then I'll sit back and get back to my writing. And I mean, surprisingly, it has happened with every piece. I feel I have given, my entire story I've put in this piece. Now I don't have. But then after 2-3 months, there is another, again,
story
that,
brewing
something
there,
raging, coming out. And then you, so that was the first piece was A Mother, a Girl, a Woman.
Okay.
That was the first one I performed ever on a stage. Spoken word stage.
Wow. Because I remember stumbling upon your Banter Between Generations on the internet, and until then, I was listening to like Sarah K and Phil K as a dual performance, or Tanya Ingram on Button Poetry, and all of these people who used to talk about a lot of political issues, social issues, personal issues in like a duet performance. Until I saw your piece, which is a little mother and a son arguing with each other. And I was like, if only my banters with my mother were even 10% this poetic, I could have made content out of it.
I feel humbled and hugged when I'm told that. And I have been told that by so many, people of your age, that we could it didn't start like that we had our good share of bad arguments and all, and by the end of it, when you survive all of that, you do feel that okay, you can put it when you sit and laugh over it.
Definitely.
That okay, I was bad to you, you were equally bad to me, and the third person in that whole dynamics was just figuring out what he has to do.
It's the safest thing to not take sides then.
So, and because anything he will say, we would put the blame on him, and he was the one, my husband and his father, who said that when you have so many punches being thrown at each other throughout the day, and sometimes it gets so bad, why don't you do a thing actually and put it out? And luckily for me, my son agreed, because at that age you cannot force them to do anything. So he said, okay, I'll do it. And now he does say that was the best thing we did. And maybe it improved our chemistry over time.
Because every time I've seen Hamras come to your events and just be around, hang around, it's so wholesome to see you both.
Yeah, and we have no choice. We have to get our chemistry better. Because otherwise, 2-3 days before, I tell him, okay, we can't be fighting. We have to
remember your lines.
Yeah, we have to be remembering our lines and all of that. So,
and for all that you say that you were not sure that if your performance is going to connect to the audience, I remember Spoken Fest this 2019. I was at the Camp Tinder stage, and we couldn't hear what the performer is saying on stage because everyone was cheering for your performance happening on the next stage. So we had to actually halt for a minute, let your cheering get complete, and then start with the rest of our event flow. And that was so crazy, right? Because I am grinning ear to ear, and everybody's like, wasn't her flow broken? How is she grinning? Because, I think
I had the best audience. And an audience, the lucky part was that I was making jibes. I should not be saying that at millennials. And that was a ground full of millennials. Yeah. And they were cheering me. And, that was... was an experience I'll remember for the whole, after that one performance, my thing was, I can retire, I can put my legs up. It was that kind of a feeling that I've had the best time on stage with that. So, that was a very wonderful experience, actually.
And another salient thing is, I love how you mix economics with literature. I mean, if I knew that I could study economics through literature, I would have actually had a minor in eco, regardless for all the love of the subject, because you just casually mentioned diminishing marginal happiness, and I understood the entire concept in a minute. So how did that come about?
I was maybe trying to justify my degrees in economics. So it was, I be a bit fair to them as well. So it was, as I said, the first piece, I thought that it is a part of my story.
Correct.
I was academically, I had mastered in something else, and then I took up something else. And so I felt that is a story that is not just mine.
Okay,
I think, umpteen number of women have the same stories. They take sabbaticals, they then reinvent themselves. They come back after taking care of, my latest piece is again about the same thing. That at times I feel sabbaticals require stronger calls than your surging ahead. To take a call that, okay, I'm going to hang my boots for this a couple of years, or like for me it was, I was feeling that I'm not able to live the best of my son's growing up years. I was missing out. At career-wise, I was at the peak when I hung my boots, and it was even at home. My husband said that, okay, are you sure you shouldn't be doing this? I feel you should not be doing this, and it will get figured out on the way, and all of that. But for me, it has always been that if I'm doing this, I'm totally into this. If I'm doing that. So for me, it was a story I knew very well. It is not just my story. It is the story of many women, and it will connect. And it's just I wanted to take it and how do I then speak about my economics part? So for the best thing was I was trying to figure out my own diminishing marginal happiness, and my marginal curves had made way for parabolas, and my asset classes were roaring, and I was a flourishing economy now on the side swings and soaring. So that I'm told that, okay, those who have kind of any knowledge about economics and all, they relate to it better. So, and I'm happy. I don't mind now. Otherwise, I used to tell my mother I was never interested in economics. She was a literature person, and for her it was, this can be followed as a passion, and she was right in some way. She said, she was like, you can pick it up at any point of time. You can do reading and all of that. And at that point, economics was. And she said, since you are, as we say now, if you are scoring well, you take up science or commerce. So at that point, it was, no, your master's has to be in economics. So, and then I cleared my UGC, the NET exam as well for lectureship. And then on hindsight, I think everything makes you grow in a very different way. I won't say that got wasted. I don't feel at all.
About your mother, there's a very interesting story that I think we've spoken about, and I've read also on the internet about people talking about it, that you got her to come and perform a poem at one of the events. How was that, and how did that go?
Yeah, I'm sandwiched between two generations, and I'm lucky both of them agree to do. I'm able to make them agree to it.
No, wait, you also got your husband to perform at an event.
Yes.
So it's not just two generations.
Yeah, I think we've got all obsessed with mics and stage. So she had come visiting, and she writes.
Okay.
Like, as I was a closet writer since till a few years back, my whole writing was for my own self. Like, I have to chronicle my son's milestones, and I have all the highs and lows and all the jokers and Johnnies you keep meeting. I had this thing of chronicling everything. And I picked it up from her somewhere. She has that thing. She will, anything that has any way positive or negative affected her, she has a diary and she does write also poetries when she is very simple poetries. So she had come, and luckily at that time Habitat, Harsh Shahi contacted us that one segment if me and my son can host. Two segments. That one segment if I can host, and one segment if Hamraz can host. And she was visiting, and normally the month that she's here, I try not to venture out much, because that's the time I get to be with her the whole year. So she said, I want to come. I want to see you both do it. Like I want to see my grandson doing it, and I want to see you. I said, then you also do one piece. And initially she did say, no. I'm an old woman going on stage and this and that. But that way she's a very positive and very open approach to life. At every point she has had that. So after a little bit of coaxing, she agreed. She said, but I don't know how it will be. And we said, no, that's the one thing we told her, that the audience here is so wonderful. They will even not let you feel for once. And I just put a word to Harsh that in that, can our mother perform? He said, we would love to.
Yeah, I mean,
and she went and about daughters.
Okay.
When I think I had got married and moved away, that was something she had written 20 years back at that time. It was there. She carries her diary everywhere. She has that habit of my diary from day one. She has maintained when I was born till I was 5 years.
Cool. Yeah.
And then when my brother came in, she said, I stopped writing your diary. And 4 years back, she came, she handed over. It had all torn pieces. It had my scribbles all over. And imagine my son reading my diary. Like it's like
it's a surreal
writing.
Right?
I think I have also used writing. I picked it from her only as a therapy, during teenage years, maybe to vent out my angst. If there was nothing else, I had to write it down. And during our, like when we are building a life, during our 30s, when we have new people walking in our professional space, our personal space, you have highs, you have lows and all of that. So I have used it like that.
Correct.
So that has come from her. Totally. I mean, because I saw her doing it, I mean, it came very
you
automatically.
kind of picked it up.
Yeah, and she did it. And I think that's a memory we made for life. We made for generations to share. And we had not told her, but we told Harsh to record it.
Oh, that is so
We
cool.
didn't tell her because she would
no
one
conscious.
Will record. No one will record. And in fact, my husband was traveling.
Okay.
He made it straight from the airport. He said, I want to be a part of
this experience. Yeah.
And then when it went very well, after that it was, Arey, record karwa lande. So then we told her, we got it recorded.
Wow.
And it is there. I mean, it will be with us. Then I think on one of her birthdays, I had put it up. And,
that's when we happened to see it.
Yeah, I had put it up then. And I think that's, again, one. I will thank the spoken word space for giving us such memories.
I think I wasn't really off track when I said it was a banter across generations with the poetry, right? But do you really believe when people say that age is just a number in the spoken word scene? How has your experience been around that?
I think as of now, it's a number across all
art forms.
Art forms, it's just a number. Or for that matter, even when it comes to fitness or anything, you are trekking beyond your 50s, you are cycling at 60 and all of that. So here also, and as you were saying, initially when I saw Rabia's, or for that matter, many other pieces, I had also come across Krishnan Iyer's piece, story.
The cycle one?
No. That was a story about his friendship. Krishnan Iyer is, I think, a few years elder to me also.
Yeah.
So it was his very simple story. And I then realized, okay, I mean, it's got nothing to do with age.
Correct.
You do have to, as much as we say that, okay, age doesn't matter to me and all.
Yeah.
Any new space you're venturing into, you do have your little doubts.
Correct.
So I saw that and I realized, okay, this is such a wonderful space, so welcoming, so embracing for any. And now also I feel it's nothing to do with age. It's the only thing it has to do with is good writing and the connect you make with an audience.
Definitely.
So.
I mean, with your piece and your work, it has always been a very different experience, right? Because you see a certain trend of themes that slam poetry has picked up upon. So your identity becomes central, or like your politics or your personal is political. But your pieces are deceptively simple is what I always believe. Like, they sound so nice when you listen to them, but you realize the kind of depth your piece has or the kind of themes that it has. You play with parenting, which is something that I don't think a lot of people in the spoken word scene are doing right now. Like, you will see pieces written for mothers, but you never get to really hear the other side of it through slam poetry. And that's something that's like a global phenomenon, right? So very few mothers are also actually sharing spaces with their their children and talking about things. So when you kind of look at how everybody else in the spoken word scene is working around things and how you choose to do it, what do you feel like? How do you feel you're leading the way there?
I think all of us have made a different space for our own kind of things we are writing about.
Yeah.
And I feel, lucky and blessed that I am writing about, I mean, life is throwing things my way, which are different from, because I don't write fiction. I can't, that's not my forte actually.
Yeah.
So I write only the stories that I have lived myself. So at one point I do feel might be I won't have any stories. So, but then we did Banter, and then my son moved away. He's now, miles away from us. So I was dealing with an empty nest. So when you are at that stage, you look back at 18 years of your parenting.
Yeah.
And I realized that we were not just raising a child, we were growing up with him.
Yeah.
It was like one milestone at a time. We were growing up with him. We were overcoming our own paradigms.
Correct.
And it is not a one-way process. It's not a diktat you hand over to the next generation. Parenting is not about that. It's not... There were so many things. And as I think I discussed with you also, that piece I have kept as an open piece because I think parenting is endless.
Yeah.
I will keep adding on to it. Every new place that I go and perform, every time I think of some 2-3 new stanzas that I add to it, which are talking about our generation and his generation. And then also I feel at the end of every piece, I should have a happy feeling.
Yeah.
My way of looking at things is that. And I think satire, humor are more potent. For me, they are more potent than anger and all of that. So I make the most use of all of that.
I mean, satire has classically been the strongest weapon to actually protest, as opposed to using real anger and displaying that. I mean, you've seen that throughout literature, and whenever you start speaking, I want to zone out. It feels like a very nice, comforting space where I just want to keep listening to you over and over, because every single time I have a conversation with you, we talk about something completely different, completely
we have
new,
had
and there's
wonderful
always
conversations.
A takeaway, be it even complaining about something to actually resolving things or anything for that matter. But I want to take a small tangent because I'm really curious as to how did creative dopes come around?
Creative dopes came around when I was doing my content work. Honestly, at the point at which I set up that page, I had not even an iota of idea that I will get into this space.
Correct.
I was doing content work for agencies. I was writing for websites, parenting websites. So I was writing for Women's Web and Mom's Presso. That happens to be the biggest mommy platform. I think I picked up my blogging, all technicalities and all of it from Moms. They handheld me actually. And because I am very averse and very rigid when it comes to learning something that is something technical related to digital space and all of that. So that was how I think I'm losing the question.
Creative dopes.
Creative dopes, yeah. So I had to when I was other agencies, when they were contacting, so I need to have my work, I needed to have it at one place actually. So it was basically to have it all accounted at one place, that this is the work I have done. I was writing for brands as well at that time. So that these are the brands I've written for and all of that. So it now this I must share with you. That last 1.5 years back, I was told that your search, all your on Insta or on Twitter, the same name should be there, and people are looking for Jasmine, Khurana and Creative Dopes. And when I tried to change the name, Facebook now doesn't allow me to do that.
Oh no,
But I think again, since I don't have a control over it, I believe creative, because for me it was always dopes that came my way in the form of life experiences, and I had to just pour them out. The content work, I was doing it, but somewhere I am not that kind of a writer who will get bound by deadlines and all of that. So I did it for some time. I enjoyed doing it, but then once I forayed into this, I've stopped doing that. But Creative Dopes remains, and I think that's a name very dear to my this thing, and that logo also.
Yeah, it's a really cute logo. I really
that
like
one of our we had come across that person, Nitin Ghatke is his name. So he made that long back. That also. You get at times things happen, you don't know what they're going to be used for later. I mean, 2, 3, 4 years down, you are going to be using. He made a very nice that cartoon for. We have actually a wall in our house that has a cartoonized version of our whole life.
Oh,
life
that
story.
Is so cool.
Yeah, from when we moved after our marriage to our son was born and all of that. So that is done by that. He was a college student at that time. We had met him at a birthday party. Making cartoons of kids. So I had his number and I told him, he made that whole wall for us.
Yeah.
Of course, there were other people who finally put it up and all of that. But the figures were made by him. So I told him I want one. Maybe at some point I'll need it. And that he had made for me. And that's very dear to me. He has somewhere, I'm right now not that much in, but I believe he has moved on and he's doing very well in his own space.
That is really
And
cool.
I think some people you grow up together with.
Yeah.
So he is one of them. Creative Dopes is something I've grown along with.
Yeah.
And so that's the way it came up.
I mean, I'm never going to be like not amused by your ability to find stories in the most mundane of things, the most random places around you. And just before we get into a break, you have another creative dope waiting for us across, a piece that you would like to perform for us.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah. So I think that's the right time to make people wait a little and just get into a quick break.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Hey everybody, welcome to another awesome week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you aren't following us on social media, please make sure you do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Also, quick reminder, please do fill out our survey. It's at ivmpodcast.com/survey. It's a listener survey. We're trying to understand more about who's listening to our stuff, what kind of things you would like to see from us in the future, what you have been seeing so far, what you think of it, what shows you like, all kinds of different stuff. Also who you are, right? So I mean, like all kinds of different stuff. Just please do come in and fill it out. It would be really helpful. That's ivmpodcast.com/survey. I want to thank our sponsors this week, Cambly, Intel, and Storytel. Remember, sponsors are what make this stuff possible. So if you enjoy the content, please do thank our sponsors. We have 2 new shows releasing this week. Laxmi Krishnan, better known as Literary Chills on Twitter, talks to agents of literary culture on her show Litnama. She plunges deep into new genres of literature born in the digital era as she talks to the performers, storytellers, bloggers, poets, and writers. New episodes are out every Tuesday from 10th December. The Traveling Professor's Diary is hosted by Siddharth Deshmukh. It's a show about a curious human being with an eagerness for travel and observation. He visits colleges such as MICA, SP Jain, Symbiosis, Flame, Upgrad, Talent Age, and spreads the digital gospel of design, marketing, and business transformation. Episodes are out every Tuesday and Thursday starting 10th of December. This week's The Seen and the Unseen celebrates its 150th episode. Amit is joined by publisher and editor V.K. Karthika. She talks about her journey of publishing and highlights the need of diversity in a publishing house. This week on IVM Likes, Abbas and Alakar are joined by me, Amit Doshi, along with Pawan Srinath, who hosts our Pragati podcast, and Thale Arate. We discuss our favorite fantasy fiction movies, books, and everything else. Do tune in. It's quite a fun conversation. And we talk about all kinds of weird stuff. On Storytellers and Storysellers, Vineet is joined by storyteller Anisha Dixit, better known as Rikshawali, and storyseller Tracy D'Souza, former channel head at TVF's Garliapa. They talk about the future of women creators in India, how they work with brands, and how their teams perceive them as leaders. On Ganatantra, Saryu and Alok unpack what happened in Maharashtra after the assembly polls, and how the office of the governor has been misused to meddle in state politics. On Edges and Sledges, Ashwin, Varun and DJ focus on the India vs West Indies T20 series. On GBCD, Sunetro and Farhad talk about relationships and breakups as they share their experiences of navigating through the same and learn to acknowledge their feelings. It's a crossover on the Empowering series as Zarina is in conversation with Chetna, host of Positivity Unlimited. They talk about her shift from the corporate world to life coaching, about positivity and self-belief. On 9XM Soundcast, Eva is joined by Bollywood singer Benny Dayal. They talk about his experience of working with A.R. Rahman and some of his favorite composers in Bollywood. And with that, let's get on with your show.
So, Jasmine, hi.
Hi.
I saw
Good
you
to be
kind
back.
of going over your piece, like looking at it, sneaking peeks while you're talking to me. So, yeah. So, should we do the performance bit right away? Should we like not make
I'm raring to
people
go before I lose all my lines. So
Perfect.
So this is growing up with you.
Okay.
The mirror in my house is missing him much. The fledgling who has just flown away out of my nest. He braces up for adulthood. We embrace our midlife, but we pause for just a while to look at 18 years of our parenthood. And voila, a realization that we were not just raising a child, we were growing up with him, one milestone at a time. We passed on one learning, we got 2 back in return. He was outgrowing his pajamas, we were outgrowing our paradigms. We will be perfect parents and raise flawless trophy kids. That's how we look at it, till we become parents and are neck deep into it. No single modus operandi that guarantees you a perfect 10 on 10. Good parenting is always far from perfect. It's trying to being perfect that gets in the way of good. Instead of telling them how to live your lives, it's just living and letting them watch us live. So if there is one thing that makes us better versions of our own selves, undoubtedly it is parenting, and I strongly recommend it. Values. Value systems are best passed on in the ways we are living our lives, not diktats to be handed over to the next generation to toe the dotted line. Remember, we were raised in a different era. They are growing up in a different dynamic. What was the rule book I followed might need a revolution to be done away with. Have we not seen mute modes of one generation soliciting mutinies from the next one? It's not my way or the highway. It's not a throne to command respect from. It's a hot seat. Yes, it's a hot seat of careful responsibility, delicate directions. One moment gently guiding, the next moment just letting go. Yes, the bonds with the next generation are not on an automated mode. They lie cradled between democracies and dictatorships, the parenting styles that we choose. Somewhere between the paradigms of parenting, the wings of freedom, the chains of tradition, the beliefs, the disbeliefs, the do's, the don'ts, lie love, longing, and belonging, lie banters, logical conversations and arguments. Trust me, the only ways to bridge gaps between generations. There could be a kick in controlling, but there is love in decontrol. There is love in not comparing your times versus our times, our struggles versus your getting it all on a platter. There is love in celebrating positive legacies being passed. There is love in shedding our dead leaves and beliefs. And there is love in just watching fresh flowers bloom and grow. Each generation faces newer challenges, has lots more to juggle as times and technologies hound and get the better of us. Remember, we were cradled by Doordarshan and we are raising a Netflix generation. We were raised on a weekly ration of one movie, one Chitrahar. But we too were blinded when cable TVs and VCRs waged their wars. We too resented blanket bans on TVs during exams, and we too have rebelled and read Mills and Boons and Tintins hidden inside our textbooks. Let's not forget our pasts. But we figured out our lives, didn't we? After binge-watching on marathons of movies, binge-watching on Dhoop Kinare and Tanhaiyan, on rented VCRs and cassettes overnight. So keep calm and keep parenting on. Keep calm and keep parenting on. It's fun growing up with two generations. One, adulting on replays of Friends. Another midlifing on Made in Heaven, and yet another rocking their golden ears. Aka Zindagi Gulzar hai. One's sacred games could be unsacred for the others. One's Gulzar could be someone else's Dushwar. Our heavens, there's nothing like Made in Heaven, for our heavens and hells are here and with each other. So let's raise 4 more shots for all. The cautions and concerns are not for one, but for all. Let our virtual identities not shadow our real ones. Let our screen times not screen out our real relations. For time and trust. Time and trust will never cease to be the eternal magic mantras. This Gen Next will take on the world. Just let the Game of Thrones be done. Juggling their PUBGs and puberties, their teenage, their Tinders, rolling their eyes when we start our lectures or building their own YouTube ventures. This next gen is going to be spearheading many path-breaking researches and revolutions. So let's just forget everything and make memories with each other. For when they fly off our nests, and one day they certainly will. When they fly off our nests, it's only moments and memories that will make them yearn to fly back and it is only moments and memories that will warm our empty hearts and nests later. Thank you.
I'm just gonna go and call my mom up because that's what this wants to make me do. Oh God, okay, I need a minute.
This was, I think,
to gain my composure.
This was too emotional a piece to write.
Okay.
And every time I deliver it again, I go through a plethora of emotions.
Yeah.
Because there are memories coming back, and then the kids are not around. You want to reach out to them, you want to hug them, but then this is the way life is, and it should be. They are going to build their lives out of once they fly off and they get their own wings. So
makes me want to really think, have I been grateful enough for everything that my parents have done? Oh God. Wow, thanks, Jasmine.
The first time I sent a part of it to my son, and he's saying, Mom, it's too senti. Because
that's
they
just
have
a way of saying I miss you. Trust me.
They maybe I would love to choose to believe that. But that's life, and we are loving what all it's dishing our way. So.
Yeah. Oh God, this is beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Every time you've kind of moved to literature to find a refuge for all of your emotions, to find the actual, means to communicate what you would like to say out loud to the world, or even just whisper it to somebody you really, really love, right? So then when you use slam poetry as a medium, there's this one question that's constantly being brought up by people who are not probably inside the scene or who have not seen it grow over time, that is slam poetry literary enough? So if you're wondering something on those lines, where do you stand? What do you feel about it?
As far as my pieces are concerned, I think it's for the world to decide. But I think I have come across some wonderful pieces that I believe, since this is going to be a part of, it's an offshoot of literature only.
Correct.
I want to believe that, I want the world to believe it.
Definitely.
We have come across such wonderful pieces that some of them I have felt that they should go down some years down the line in books, and children should be reading them, or children should be hearing those performances. Like, for example, every time I hear Rakesh Tiwari's 100,000 Likhne Wale, I think that's a wonderful literature piece, and every writer, that's a kind of piece every writer will want to come back to. Every person who is thinking anything about the writing space or anything else, the way he has drawn context from about all the stalwarts of literature he has put, I mean, that's there. And then there's another one, Gaurav Tripathi's Lord Ram and Court. So another very path-breaking piece.
Definitely.
And I think that's what literature is all about. You are writing things that have never been heard before, that have never been said the way things were being said before. So for me, yes, it is literature enough. And we better write things that can endorse that more and more.
Definitely.
If we are only writing to bring out a piece or all, I think we should just refrain from falling in that trap. And wherever there is any, I think, creative space, quality, that is the benchmark.
Definitely, right? So abroad they started converting your performance pieces into written literature, and they're publishing books. So I think that day is not far when at some point I'll be like, oh, Jasmine's piece is being published. Remember the time she was on that podcast with me?
Since you've touched upon that, my 6 yards are my cape. It went viral across. I think there's not a continent from where I have not received messages from not just women.
Correct.
Surprisingly, from not just women, across genders and across generations. And I have been asked that is this piece in a text form somewhere available? We would want to have it, and every time we can't hear. So I think that was the most humbling thing for me, that somebody is asking for my piece as a form. So after a lot of, I wasn't sure, is it a form of a poetry collection, I'm asked? Is it, I had somebody from Delhi who is doing a PhD, and she said she's researching on experiential poetry, and this piece is something that is a kind of falls in that genre. And so I have finally now put first of my pieces on the blog, and that's my 6 yards are my cape, because I was asked to do that. So I think we are steering towards those times when people are asking for our written pieces as well.
Correct.
And that's a very encouraging trend.
I mean, slam poetry has definitely has a bright future, and it can, because it has all the ways to foray into different mediums and thrive, because as long as the other mediums,
I think the positive part we
thriving.
should look at is if there's there are a lot of youngsters doing it, and there are lots of youngsters wanting to come into it, and if young people are taking to writing, I strongly feel that writing makes you a better version of your own self. It improves the way you are as a person, and that again transforms into better writing.
Yeah.
So if there is a whole generation of kids or youngsters who are wanting to write, that's a very, very encouraging trend that's coming in. So let's look at the positives.
Yeah, and as Virginia Woolf would say, all we need is a room of your own.
Yes.
And we can always get going. So Jasmine, where can we find you on the internet if we want to follow you, talk to you, reach out to you?
Okay, I'm on Insta as J. Rimi Khurana.
Okay.
It's often said Jimmy. No, not Jimmy. It's J. Rimi Khurana.
Okay.
Facebook, Creative Dopes.
Dopes, yeah.
And Twitter, Jasmine Khurana 3.
Perfect.
I mean, that's lots to remember, but
we've taken notes.
Jasmine
Deep
Khurana and everything, YouTube, and I think one thing will lead you to the other. And then my blog is there, www.jasminekhurana.com.
Yeah.
So,
and you're always just a Google search away.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being a part of this, Jasmine. This
Thank
means
you.
a
It
lot
was an
to us.
absolute pleasure, Laxmi.
Thank you so much. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcasts.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to reach out to me, I am @Laxmi Krishnan on Twitter and @Literary Chills on Instagram.
How many times have you caught yourself Googling stuff on health and wondering if it's the right information? How many times have you heard different health experts give opposing views, which has only left you confused? There are rising cases of cancer, heart, diabetes, stress, and autoimmune diseases. Meet the patients and the experts who paved the path of true healing. Join me, Rachna Chachi, cancer nutrition coach and nutritional therapist on Heal and Hearty. I take you through my own journey of recovery from an incurable disease and the journey of so many others who healed only via nutrition and holistic healing. Find the answers you seek for what's good for your health and what's good for your soul. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. Don't forget your date with good health.
This is the amazing story of something awesome. Once, Chuck decided to start a podcast, and so he did. The end. Okay, that was a crappy story. But I've got some really cool stories over at my new show, The Origin of Things. On this podcast, I look at the stories of how brands came into being, and sometimes evolved out of quite unexpected circumstances. And to make it really fun, I reveal the name of the brand, and sometimes a category, only at the very end. The show is 5 to 7 minutes per episode and perfect for trivia junkies and brand nerds, especially those with short attention spans. New episodes out every Wednesday on IVM Podcasts app or website, or any podcast app or site that you happen to prefer. End of story, they lived happily ever after.